at Safe Sanctuaries. It begins with baptism. Does anybody know what we say when somebody's being baptized in Methodist Church? Parents are up front. Remember, they always tell us to open the book to such and such page, and we read along. Do you remember any of those words they talk about at all?
We will raise this child up and we will support this family.
That's good. Well, baptism is an initiation into the church. The entire worshiping congregation participates in the sacrament, saying we will keep this child safe. We will help this child, in common words, get to heaven. Right? Members of the congregation reaffirm their faith and their promise to support and nurture the person being baptized. The new baby is brought before the whole congregation, not just the parents, for baptism. And the congregation pledges to help raise the baby in a way that keeps them safe and leads to eternal life. A broken covenant, though. When there are allegations of child abuse, it absolutely destroys the church. It doesn't matter if the allegation is true or not. It may even be worse if it's a false allegation. But it will rip a church apart. How many of you have known families that had an allegation of abuse of some kind or another? Anybody know a family? How'd that family survive, Deb?
Okay.
They went okay? Most families I know don't do okay. They're never the same. There's always this defensiveness about them, that something's happened. And again, it's actually even worse if it's a false allegation. Child victim. His or her family and the entire congregation suffers the trauma of knowing that its life-giving covenants have been broken. Think about the news. We see it with priests, right? Well, it doesn't happen just in Catholic churches, and it doesn't happen just with priests. I used to have this belief when I was really young, when they would do things like Danger Stranger, that you watched out for at the time they were called hobos when I was a kid. The bad people wore dark coats and weren't shaved and were dirty, and maybe they even had horns and cloven feet. That was the bad person. Unfortunately, what we have come to realize is it could be anybody. We can no longer assume that everybody in our congregation is safe around our children. We've made that pledge right through baptism to protect children, to raise them in a safe environment through our church. And again, what if there's an accusation and it's a false accusation? One of the most common things I hear about Safe Sanctuaries is, I have worked with children in this church for 50 years. Everybody in this church knows me. No, we don't. No, we don't. Because if there's abuse, and especially if it's sexual, families keep that a secret. There's no way they're telling their neighbors what happened in their household. You don't know who sits beside you. They may love Jesus. They may be the most devout Christian we've ever seen. But everybody has something secret, something dark. In 1996, the General Conference of the Methodist Church adopted a resolution aimed at reducing the risk of child sexual abuse in our churches. The resolution has been affirmed at each and every general conference since then. Every year it comes up. Do we keep it? Do we drop it? Has it been successful? It's been very successful. So every year it's readopted. 1996. This is 2019. We started working on this in 2017. So we've been behind the ball. So we've had to play catch up. If any stranger or new member can have immediate access to our children, we have failed to provide the safe sanctuary we promise our children at their baptism. If you were having a birthday party for your child, and somebody knocked on your door and said, I just love children's birthday parties. Can I help? Let me take a group of these children over here and take them to the park and let them play and do this and do that. Would you let them? An absolute stranger. And yet how many times in our churches we are so overburdened, there's so many kids, there's so many activities, there's not enough volunteers, and the volunteers we have are the same 20. And yet anybody can walk into a church anywhere just about and say, you need help. And they're like, we can't do that anymore. Do not allow the risk to undermine or stop our ministries. Now here's the scary part. When people come to me and say, Lord, I've been here for 50 years, I've worked every year with the children, I've done this, I've done that, I've done this, I've done that. Bless you. You're a saint. I love you. But what about if you didn't do it, and this youth just got a wild hair about something and said you did? Half of Safe Sanctuaries is really about protecting yourselves. Don't put yourself in a spot where there could be a false accusation. Acknowledge the risk and develop a practical plan to implement. Take steps to prevent harm to our children and our workers. Continue to answer the gospel's imperative to be in ministry with children, making a difference in their lives. We don't want you to stop because of fear of being accused of something. We just want to make sure that the steps are there, that you, if you get accused, there's a witness with you. The Methodist Church as a local church should develop and implement an ongoing education plan for the congregation and its leaders on the reality of child abuse, risk factors leading to child abuse, and strategies for prevention. When you get done, before Vacation Bible School, before the congregation, you will get a certificate. Hang on to this certificate. I may be gone next month. Mike may get transferred, whatever, okay? And if the records for whatever are lost, which by the way, what you give me, your forms, your application forms and everything, goes into a lock file cabinet. Not anybody can go in and get access to these. I can, Joel can, Sue Slaughter. Okay? The secretary can, Lisa. But they're locked. But just in case something ever goes wrong, this is to be renewed every 3 years. Hang on to the certificates I'm going to give you, because that's your proof. So if you move to a church in Tampa, Florida, and they have Safe Sanctuaries policy, you got your certificate. This is a worldwide program. So now we start with the first implementation they said we had to do. What is child abuse? Statewide record number of calls in 2018. We think this stuff's going down because we're doing all this training. It's going up. 221,969 cases in 2018 as compared to 211,554 in 2017. It's going up.
Are you talking sexual assault or just child abuse?
All child abuse. Adams County, 9,685 reported. Here's the difference though. 3,587 were accepted for assessment. The other thing I hear fairly often is, well, even if I suspected something, I don't want them involved with social services. That's terrible in a family. Just because something gets reported doesn't mean the family's split up. It doesn't mean there's this big to-do on the news or neighbors or schools or anything else. They check into them, and if they feel like they can't prove it or they couldn't find anything wrong, it's just filed away. But the thing to remember throughout all this, you're not the investigator. going to really stress that and say it again. You are not a child abuse or sexual assault investigator. All you have to have is a suspicion. That's it. It's not your job to prove it. That's for the experts. Does anybody remember the McMartin case out of California in the 80s, forever ago? Huge daycare. I mean, like 300 kids. This is one of the biggest daycares in California. Huge. Been in business 20 years. Great reputation. And then it started to make the news. Children in the McMartin daycare had been forced to witness cult bloodletting, sex with animals, drinking blood, rape. And at the time, I was getting my early childhood degree, and I was just like, sick. And every month, you heard something new about it. And this family was just devastated. And I'm going, I don't care if you're devastated or not. You're, ooh, oh. It was all false. There wasn't training that there is today. Today, they know how to ask a child a question. They learned the McMartin case. They studied it. And they found that you can get a child to say anything. Lucy, did you ever see your mommy hit your daddy? If you did, I'd sure like to know. What's a child going to do? Uh-huh. Yeah. They found through the McMartin case, the investigators led them into what they wanted them to say. That's the warning for social services departments. That's the warning for police departments. But we also have to take that in. We are not trained in what questions to ask. And when we start asking questions, and they kind of get that's what they want us to hear, they'll tell you things that may or may not be true. So it's not up to you to ask questions. If you think there's abuse, you don't ask questions. You don't have the career for it, the experience for it. The first step in child abuse and neglect in Colorado is learning to recognize the signs. There are signs leading up to it. How many times have we seen on the TV or radio this? There were signs. There were signs. The presence of a single sign, though, does not mean anything's happening. It takes a closer look at the situation. And here's where the catch comes. All you need to do is suspect. You don't ask a bunch of questions. You just have to suspect and let the experts deal with it. When my daughter Anita was little, she continually, for about 6 months, kept a bruise right about here. This girl had the head the size of a watermelon and the body of an ant. So, what's the heavy part of the body? That's what hits first. She was falling all the time and kept this black area here, here, skinned up. Well, guess what? That looks like somebody backhanded her. And the lady at Safeway, I think, reported child abuse. Social services came out. Spent a good hour at my house, and I was mortified. I said, I promise you. She falls. And she looked at Anita and she said, yeah. Her head's so out of proportion to the rest of her body, I can see where she goes over, that's what's going to hit. And they talked to her. She was 2 years old. And they talked to my 4-year-old, and they talked to me. Case unfounded. I was mortified by it. But at the same time, what if it had been real? What if I was hitting my child? Trust your gut instinct and call if you suspect anything. I have a little note down there. I used to tell my high school students, a little knowledge is dangerous. You will leave here after 2 hours with a drop in the bucket knowledge. You're going to see child abuse everywhere. You just do. Did you ever wreck a car? I wrecked a Saturn one time. And it crumbled. Just crumbled. I I never noticed Saturns until then. After I wrecked my car, I saw Saturns everywhere, and everyone I thought, it's going to crumble, it's going to crumble, it's going to crumble. I saw them everywhere after that. Okay? You're going to do the same thing with child abuse. You're going to see it. Be careful. Trust your instinct, but caution. Anybody know what a mandatory reporter is? You think anybody in this room is a mandatory reporter?
You're gonna make us all one.
Val.
School teachers.
School teachers. What did?
You're gonna make us all
No.
after this class. No? I thought we all had to
You
report
don't
it.
fall in the category.
Nurses,
Nurses.
therapists.
Therapist. And the list goes on and on and on. A professional is the difference, Deb.
Oh, okay.
Professional who is obligated by law to report known or suspected incidents of child abuse and or neglect. If Val is a licensed teacher at the school and she suspects somebody has been abused or neglected and she does not report it, that can come back on her. Okay? When I was teaching daycare here and running the daycare for the church, had teen parents. They're still kids themselves. And I had a mom that liked to sit on the floor and put on her makeup and fix her hair with a curling iron on the floor. See where this is going? She got a 2-year-old child. They always want to mimic their parent. So this person got up to do something. Her child went to pick up the curling iron, and we've all touched our ears, right? Now, a 2-year-old does not have control over their muscles yet. So she's holding it and screaming bloody murder. Finally drops it. They take the little girl to the hospital. It's a severe burn. It's bad. She brings her to daycare the next day and says, "You're not going to like this." I said, "What happened?" She's just crying. I said, "Okay. What did you do so it won't happen again?" "Oh, I put it all up. I put it in a separate room." I said, "Okay. I don't want to get social services involved because your teenager is going to be 10 times worse." So I didn't call social services, but the hospital did. They did what they were supposed to. I was a mandatory reporter and did not report it. Pretty soon here they come down to the daycare. They went through every file I had in my daycare on every child. I got written up. It's still in my file at the state. I was a mandatory reporter that did not report it. If you're a mandatory reporter, report it. There are
I have a
more than
question for
40
that.
categories.
I have a question on that scenario. You didn't suspect child abuse, so why would you
It
report
was
it?
child neglect.
Oh, okay.
Child neglect. She left something hazardous out for her child to get hold of. And I knew it. I fit perfectly. I should have called. I knew that. That little girl was burned badly. These are all the different groups. There's a lot of them. Continued. Even your pharmacist. And more. Clergy member. I've got exception up there. Anybody know why? Judges will not call a clergy to the stand. They can, and they can be subpoenaed. Sorry. But a judge nationwide will not call clergy. Here's the exception. If I am a child abuser, whatever, and I'm having private sessions with Joel, behind closed doors, please forgive me, help me find my way, whatever, he doesn't have to report it. If he's standing in here, and I say, "Man, I just beat the heck out of my child last week. That was the stupidest thing I ever did." He's got to report it. It wasn't confidential. It wasn't during a counseling session. So that's the difference for clergy.
But not therapists.
therapist, they will call.
Even though the relationship is the same and confidential.
Yeah, that will depend on the judge. It happens a lot. They'll call a therapist up. I used to work with children identifying sexual abuse with Girl Scout groups on the Western Slope. I traveled to different Girl Scout groups and did a thing on, you know, the area, the bathing suit area, that kind of thing, with dolls. And the girls had an opportunity after us to write on a piece of paper, help me, and their name. And nobody ever knew except me. And then I had to go through the process of starting that for them. And there was a case where a man had gone in and said he was sexually molesting his daughter. And it came out by this little girl telling me, because I then reported it. And the therapist got in trouble. I don't know how that works. I don't know how they decide at what point they have to report. I don't know how that works. But I know that therapist did get in trouble.
Because he was talking to her?
He had talked to the father
Okay.
and didn't report anything. And so I'm not sure how that works, to tell you the truth. I always thought with a therapist that was private too. But I hear of other cases where it's not quite that simple, so I don't know. If you suspect something, why should you report it? What if it is child abuse, neglect? Do you remember that mom a few years ago that went to France and left her children behind? Do you remember that? She left 3 children behind with like $20 and she went to France for a week with her boyfriend. That's child neglect. Kids were probably safe. They had food in the house. Everything was fine. What if there had been a fire? What if there had been a tornado? I mean, things happen. So she was charged with child neglect. As a teacher, I used to hear the most horrible stories. You have a chance to stop. Protect the victim and other children in the home. I've had them tell me, well, it's just this one child. I take my frustrations out on her, so I leave the others alone. What? That doesn't make any sense to me. Okay. To prevent harm to other children to whom the person responsible for abuse and or neglect may have access. Here's the problem with secrets. So-and-so has a husband that molests children, but he's also a Boy Scout leader. How sure are you he's not molesting Boy Scouts or Girl Scouts? It is not our job to decide who's guilty, who's innocent, who will do it, who won't do it. To prevent future abuse and or neglect, the idea is to get that family help. To help provide services to families and the children. And to promote positive changes in families. Here's the other one I hear all the time, can I be sued? Didn't Vicki have something happen Les was telling me? Do you want to tell them about that? Or?
Well, it just, our father, the little child told Vicki that her mom beat her, you know, or hits her a lot. And Vicki sent it to the office. And then the father came in wanting to talk to Vicki. And Vicki, because she had, you know, her face was bloody. And so she sent her down to the office, so that was Vicki's last contact with her at that point, you know. And she sent her down. And then the dad came and wanted to talk to Vicki because he said his child was a liar. You know, she always lied. And Vicki said, you know, she was really upset. She talked to me, and, you know, and then I told Les, and Les flipped out because that she should not have to deal with this person. You know, even though she wasn't actually the one reported, other than sending the child. And the child told them down in the office the same thing, that her mom had hit her. And so anyhow, Vicki never did have to face the father, and I don't know where it went from there.
How did he even learn that she was the one that had sent, I mean,
That's
did
the
the little
catch.
girl tell them that her teacher had sent her to the office?
Well, I don't know, somebody probably said, oh, the teacher sent her because she said, or something like that.
Okay.
But it was just kind of a
The school handled it
Yes.
poorly,
inappropriately.
yes.
And that's the reason for this training. We're gonna talk about what the process here to do that, so we don't have things like that.
But it's concerning that the school handled it.
Well, and let's immediately call the counselor, I mean, you know, always a father, and he said, this isn't right, I just took a training, you know, she's not supposed to, and they said, no, you're absolutely right, she went to the principal and they stopped it immediately, he was not, because he made an appointment to see her after school, and,
To see Vicky.
uh-huh, and so, that was what, it just kind of went the wrong, I mean, Vicky she has all kinds of things with kids, and she generally, you know, sends them and then checks up later, and usually they tell the office the same thing, and then the office is the one that takes it from there.
Was there
Vicky should
abuse?
have been protected. She sure can't be fired or sued for it. Okay?
Was there abuse on that case, Val?
I don't know, because you
At
never
this point,
find out.
Vicky should have been
Yeah.
removed from it. She wouldn't have.
So we didn't know anything more about it, I mean, you know, she's had some dandies, so, but.
Yeah. Colorado law, here's what it says. Shall be immune from any liability, civil or criminal, or termination of employment that otherwise might result by reason of such acts of participation, unless a court of competent jurisdiction determines that the such person's behavior was willful, wanton, and malicious. If you report in good faith, which means they have not reported recklessly or with no responsible basis for making a report. Here's the catch. I don't like that father. I'm sure he's doing something. So I'm going to report him. You're not covered then. You did something willful. You had no reason whatsoever to report it. Okay? This isn't a case of your neighbor doesn't like you, so they start reporting you for child abuse or neglect. They can go to jail for that. Okay? If you report in good faith, I saw Mark, or when they were playing, she said something, that's okay. You're not the investigator. You don't have to have all the details. You don't have to know for sure it happened. Trust that gut instinct, okay? A few years ago, many years ago, I forget how old I am now, when Playboy Channel first came out, nasty thing, right? But a lot of parents got it. And I was running a daycare for a college, and we had a play center. And all of a sudden, lots of kids ended up in the Playhouse Center humping, for a better word. And I remember standing there going, now, normally I would consider that they've seen or been a part of something. That's not something kids do unless they've been exposed to it. What happened? And so I got to kind of listening and watching, and ended up taking each of those parents in the office and saying, I need to clarify something before it goes any further. And the parents were mortified because they had recently got in Playboy Channel and they figured the child had come in when they were thirsty or had to go to the bathroom and saw it. You know, and they're like, oh, mortified. It's coming out of the house now. That was nothing, okay? And I kind of knew it wasn't, because there was too much of it all of a sudden in different families. Something was going on. But trust your instinct. What's normal for a child? What isn't? If you report in good conscience, you're okay. You can't be sued if it's false. The person that reported me with Anita with her head didn't get sued, didn't go to jail, I didn't cause her money, I didn't go to Safeway and yell and scream at her, because I never knew who it was. But at the time I had 2 young children, one of them had some development issues. I wasn't going out a lot. I was going to Safeway once a week to eat my groceries, that's it. Had to be her. Okay. Good faith is presumed. When you report it, they presume you've got good faith, that you want the child's best interest at heart. Okay? Unless challenged by the person claiming the report was not made in good faith. Making a child abuse or neglect report is your evidence that you fulfilled your mandatory reporting. Now, you don't have mandatory reporting. You're not a professional, you're a volunteer. You did when you were teaching. I did when I was teaching. You do when you teach. But as a volunteer in this church, no. Deb, yours is a little grayer.
I
They
like
make
gray.
all kinds of exceptions around church, but it is gray. And it could be a problem. Can you remain anonymous? Yes. Child Protective Services and its employees are required by law not to disclose the name of the reporter to the family. That's what made me so mad about Vicky's case. However, this confidentiality does not apply to reports made to law enforcement. Dig that in. Don't forget that part. If you make a report to the police department, it's on file. And unless that file is sealed by a judge, that is public information. And the police are going to come and interview you. That's more public information. But there's a way around that. It's possible that as a reporter of child abuse or neglect, you may be called to testify at a civil or criminal case if you go through the police department. And the victim's parents or family will be there. Remember, it's important that you act as the eyes and ears for the child protection safety net. Like I said, I'm going to give you a way around that police issue here in a minute. Okay? If reports of maltreatment are made, appropriate services will not be delivered to the children and families who need them. I hear all the time, well, I don't want to report it because what if I'm wrong? What if you're right? What if you're right? What if that child is being abused, neglected, harmed, and you don't report it? What stops it? One thing about abuse, it escalates. There's always something a little worse around the corner. Thank you, Liz. Without your call, the abuse and or neglect may continue. Most likely will continue. So, who do you call? I would write this number down for me. If you suspect child abuse and you want to remain anonymous, this is the number you call. Counties in Colorado agreed to this because that whole police thing is scary. I mean, to go down to the police, to call a policeman, go down to the police department, fill out a form, and be afraid that you're going to have to be in court testifying is terrifying. Make it worse, what if it's a family member or somebody you know or your neighbor, a teacher, and you got to testify? That's terrifying. Do it. But I love this when I come out with this. Because I used to know every time I reported something, I had to go to court. Every time. Now, you don't have to. They have a hotline, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. They have experts there. They know what to ask you. They know what paperwork to file. They know what county to get a hold of. They know what agency to get help. They know what agency will interview the children. They have all the expertise. You've done your reporting. You're done. You're out of it. Don't tell the child you reported it. Never do that. Just let it go. They will deal with it, and you are anonymous. Everybody get that number? Okay? All right. Identifying child abuse. There are 4 major types of child abuse. Physical, sexual, emotional or psychological, and neglect. What's physical abuse? Can you spank children in the state of Colorado?
Get busted.
No, you can spank your child. But what's the line that we cross to get in trouble? Leave a mark. They get in trouble. And And injury resulting from physical aggression, that's the difference. Are you in control and swat your child's bottom? Now, not children in the daycare, not children in VBS or Sunday school. No, we're talking about your own child, not anybody else's child. Okay? Physical child abuse is a physical aggression. It's out of control, it's out of proportion, it is everything negative that we can think of. Even if the injury was not intended, the act is considered physical abuse. Now let's say I take my child and I grab her arm and I swat her bottom. Is that illegal in the state of Colorado? No. But what if she's jerking to get away from me, and when she jerks, she falls and hits her head on the coffee table? It just became child abuse. Okay? Because I let something unsafe get out of control. Okay? Beating, slapping, hitting are illegal. Pushing, shaking, kicking, or throwing. What do you think was the #1 lesson I used to teach teen parents about aggression with babies?
Don't shake them.
Shaken baby syndrome. The baby's brain barely feels, well, it doesn't feel the cavity of the skull. It's just liquid in there. So every time the baby's head is jerked forward, the brain hits the skull and bruises it and bleeds. Then they go back, right? It hits the skull. It's damage. Shaking is one of the worst things you can do for children under the age of probably 8. The brain is just loose in there. Pinching, biting, choking or hair pulling, burning with cigarettes, scalding water, or other hot objects, curling irons. Now, looking at these, I'm interested. Which one of these do you think a daycare has to report on itself, other than, beating a child? Which one of those is considered the most dangerous? I mean, beside the obvious. We know cigarette burning is bad. We know scalding water is bad. But of just some of those, let's say kids pushing each other, or kids jumping on each other, or those kind of things. What do you think a daycare is required by law to report? Biting. And I run daycares with infants and toddlers. Yeah! Do you know how many bites occur? But the daycare worker's job is to prevent that. Okay? If I had a child bite in the daycare, I had to report it to social services. Not on the parent, on me. I had not trained my staff enough, I didn't have a good enough staff, and the daycare gets in trouble. So biting is serious, very serious. I never had to report that another child got pushed or another child even got hit. Biting, I always had to report.
But biting can happen so quickly.
It's extremely quick.
I mean, especially with little toddlers, you turn around and one kid's taking your toy, so they reach over and
Bite them.
bite them. It's like,
It's very quick.
yeah.
I mean, in the state of Colorado, let's see, what was the ratio? 5 to 1. 5 children, 1 adult. You watch 5 children running around in a room in this building, it's hard to do. It's hard to do. But that's how serious it is. Any severe physical punishment. Is it the same as physical abuse? Is punishment the same as physical abuse? An injury resulting from physical aggression is physical abuse. The use of physical force with the intent of inflicting. Now there's that word, intent. That's the difference. The intent of inflicting bodily harm, bodily pain, but not injury, for the purpose of correction or control. That's the state of Colorado's definition. I can see all kinds of loopholes in it, but that's the definition. Physical punishment can easily get out of control, and that's why they call it aggression. You're angry, you're upset. And one of the worst things I ever had to call social services on, we had a biter. We were trying everything. And the daycare worker lost it and slapped the child. I'm in my office, her classroom was closed, and I still heard the slap. I went running down that hall, and here's the difference. Called my principal, And he said, well, did the child deserve it? No child deserves it. I want her fired. Would not fire her. I said, well, you need to report this to social services. He would not report it. These are 2-year-olds. What do you think is going to happen in there? I said, I think not that. Okay? We'll talk in a minute what went on further from there. Other types of physical child abuse are shaken baby syndrome, Munchausen by proxy. This one's terrifying. You got a sick child that's sick all the time, but they seem to get worse when they're with the parent. Drug use during pregnancy. This is one I had to watch very closely with teen moms. Very closely. Some signs of child abuse. Burns, bite marks, cuts, bruises, welts in the shape of an object. A belt. That's child abuse. Okay. Resistance to going home. Now, it's a fine line. Working in daycare, we get kids who sit down and don't want to go home. They're having fun. Their friends are there. Why would they want to go home? But there's a difference. You can see the look in their eyes. Again, trust that gut instinct. If you're running vacation Bible school and you're working with a group and you have a child you don't even know all that well, but they don't want to go home, watch closely. Okay? Especially when the parents know. If the parent goes up to the child and does this and the child flinches, again, watch. Don't ask. Watch. How badly does that child not want to go home? What's going on? Now again, that little bit of knowledge is dangerous. You may have a child having such a good time, they just don't want to go home. You'll see a difference. There's a difference there. You can see it. Fear of adults. Did you reach across the child to get something and the child flinches every time an adult comes near them? Okay. Now, the second part of that story with the principal. I was a mandatory reporter, professional in early childhood, and a teacher in Brighton District. Forget the principal. He didn't want to report it. I report it. Okay? I was mandatory to report. A boss cannot tell you no. Cannot.
Did he get in trouble?
No.
Because he wanted to be reported?
I reported it, so
I know
everybody was safe.
you did, but his response was concerning.
Concerning. But social services, I don't know if you got in trouble, I assume not.
Okay.
But, you know, social services, they're not going to tell you what the other guy said
That's
or
true,
did.
yeah.
You don't know. But I would assume it got me off of the hair curling incident. It finally got me in good graces again,
Mhm.
you know, because I reported.
Yeah.
It's hard to report on yourself. It's really hard. Now, the little star up there. For a church group, this is explicit. I'm sorry. There's no getting around it. Okay? We're going to talk about sexual abuse. A sexual act between an adult and a child, including penetration, intercourse, incest, rape, oral sex, and sodomy. How many of you remember that president shaking his finger? I did not have sex with that woman. It changed how we looked at sex in America still today. When I work with teens and we talk about STDs and all this stuff, they swear up and down that oral sex is fine. It's not sex. It's in the name. Okay? So that's why we're going to cover these, because who knows what your personal belief is. This is what the state of Colorado is considered unacceptable for children. Examples: fondling. Touching or kissing a child's genitals, or making a child fondle an adult's genitals. Violations of bodily privacy, forcing a child to undress. Spying on a child in the bathroom or bedroom. Expose children to adult sexuality, performing sexual acts in front of a child, exposing genitals, telling dirty stories, showing pornography to a child is sexual abuse. Commercial exploitation. sexual exploitation through child prostitution or child pornography. Regardless of the child's behavior or reactions, it's the responsibility of the adult not to engage in sexual acts with children. Sexual abuse is never the child's fault. Sexual abusers, so let's back up a minute. I've heard everything when I was reporting these things. She's sexual. She's just all over me all the time. She initiated. Really? I can tell you, I know for an absolute fact, when a child is sexually molested, of all the ones, the abuse that we're going to talk about, when a child is sexually molested, they're no longer a child. You have taken, not you, but they have taken the childhood away from the child. They will never be a child again. It's changed forever. Whoever they were meant to be has just changed. Therapy will make it better, but it never takes it away.
And when you say child, what are your ages?
The state of Colorado, 18.
Okay.
That gets to be a problem. And that's one of the reasons we have on your sheets, go to the second page. On the second page, go to the back of it. We have the 5 years older rule. Anyone volunteering or paid working with youth must be at least 5 years older than the youth they will be working with. Because research has shown, the Methodist Church, that that's where you get in trouble. You've got a 20-year-old working with a 17-year-old. Well, they're almost 18. You get in trouble. Can. Fathers, mothers, siblings, or other relatives. Child care professionals or babysitters. Clergy, teachers, athletic coaches. Foster parents or host families of foreign exchange students. Neighbors or friends. Strangers. Volunteers. These are the people we assume are the safest. But if you're a child predator, you want to be around these groups. I don't think I've ever heard someone say, well, that coach who got arrested for sleeping with a 17-year-old was a terrible person. We suspected something was wrong. What do they usually say? He was such a nice guy. Everybody loved him. They groom. They get ready. They pick out a child, and they groom them, and they groom the parent. They want the parent to like them, because the more the parent likes them, the more they
Trust them.
Some signs of sexual abuse. Inappropriate interest in or knowledge of sexual acts. Seductiveness. An 8-year-old should not know how to flirt. Avoidance of things related to sexuality or rejection of own genitals or body. My experience with these children is it's one or the other. They're either so repulsed by it that they won't even recognize their own bodies, or they're so wanting the attention, the acceptance of it. They've been trained to think that's how you relate to people, that it's a problem. Either overcompliance or excessive aggression. Fear of a particular person or family member. Okay. Any questions on that one? Emotional abuse. Any attitude, behavior, or failure to act that interferes with a child's mental health or social development. It can range from a simple verbal insult to an extreme form of punishment. Emotional abuse is almost always present when another form of abuse is found. So that's your first indication. You have a parent come in and tell their child they're stupid, they're ugly, they're fat, they're whatever. Your gut may tell you there's something else going on there too. Surprisingly, emotional abuse can have more long-lasting negative effects than any other form of abuse, physical or sexual. You hear them say for life, I still hear my father's voice. I didn't go to college till late in life. My father had told me from the day I was born I was stupid. Well, why would you go to college? I wanted to. Right up through high school, I planned on it. I was going to go to college. And as the stuff was coming in and more, I was getting some invitations. I was an athlete, believe it or not, at the time. My father would say, nobody's going to take anybody as stupid as you. Then something happened and I quit school. I was 30 years old and I knew I needed an education. So I slipped off, took community college, and took my GED. That wasn't too bad. Didn't even take a class, just passed the test. Okay, that wasn't bad. Enrolled in one college class, made straight A's. The day I graduated, I invited my entire family to my graduation. They never knew I was in school. One of the reasons I did not tell is, I'm too stupid. I have 3 degrees now, pick one, okay? Once I found out I wasn't stupid. But everything I do, I hear my father's voice. Too stupid. Emotional abuse stays with you forever. Verbal abuse, mental abuse, psychological maltreatment, or psychological abuse. Middle and high school kids in social cliques are abusive. They're not always the victims. There's some victims there. But you gotta watch. If you're working in a group with VBS or anything else, and you're working with middle and high school students, one of the first conversations you should have with your group is about respect. What does it look like? We will not call each other names. We will not isolate somebody out from this group. Not gonna do it. Okay? Because as much as we're talking about volunteers and adults doing this stuff, middle school and high school can be a nightmare.
Well, and with all the social media that they've got, it's not face-to-face so much anymore, it's on the...
Oh, yeah.
It's just as bad in elementary school too.
It is.
Well, kids are horrible to each other.
They're horrible. They really are.
Kids are just horrible.
Even though we've been trying to educate them for years about not bullying. They're not getting it, they're not stopping. I mean, the bullying thing's been around for a while.
It's been around since Cain
forever.
and Abel.
I remember in high school I stopped dating somebody because he bullied somebody else in school, and I was like, I'm done with you.
But there's
It's
so
been there
much,
forever.
there's so much out there now about kids, don't bully, don't
Yeah.
bully, don't bully, and, you know, this and that and the other, and they're still, it's not sinking in, they're not getting it.
My personal opinion, not my research or my education, my personal opinion is because they see it at home too. How many times do we hear our parents talking about the neighbor being stupid, or the neighbor being ignorant, or the neighbor being dirty, or the neighbor being whatever? A lot of us, we do what we see and hear. We forget that we're their role models, and we're in the car, and somebody cuts us off, and we go get in front of them and cut them off. Guess what we just did? Yeah. What is child neglect? Very common type of child abuse. From children, more children suffer from neglect than from physical and sexual child abuse combined. If your child does not have enough to eat, that's child neglect. Now, kids are hungry, they're growing. But if you suspect somebody you have in VBS or in Sunday school or school hasn't eaten, you gotta watch that. Did you guys keep food for children in your desk drawers? John didn't, Val did, I did too. I knew I had kids that didn't eat. Victims are not often identified. We just think they're growing kids and they're hungry. How hungry are they? When's the last time you ate? Some overlap exists between the definition of emotional and emotional neglect, abuse and neglect. Neglect is a pattern of failing to provide for a child's basic needs. Now there's a difference. Kind of the tough love approach. I told my child to get out of bed. I warned them 3 times to get out of bed. I told them to get up and brush their teeth, brush their hair, get dressed for VBS. I told them to hurry. They're already late. They're not going to have time for breakfast. We're 5 minutes late and here they are and they didn't brush their hair and they didn't get dressed right. Look at those golf clothes they got on and they didn't eat. Are you going to have a snack today? That's different than a child telling you, I didn't eat since I was here yesterday. That's very different. Watch how fast they eat. Watch if they go to get food off the table and put it in their pockets. Are they taking food because they know they're not going to eat food later?
Well, and is that, I mean, we provide totes for the kids that don't have food on, I mean.
The parent has allowed that, so that's okay. They don't have it. There's a difference between I don't have it. I just don't have it. The whole family starved it. That's different.
Right.
Now, if the family is starving to death and that parent refused that tote,
Right.
that's
That's
neglect.
different, yeah.
But there are poor, and we need to provide for that and know about that. That's different than neglect. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah.
A single act of neglect might not be considered child abuse, but repeated neglect. I've had children come to the daycare with no shoes in the wintertime. What's that about? Tough love type stuff can only go so far. You're the parent, why does your child not have shoes on? Okay? Why does your child not have a coat? They're 8 years old, and it's 20 below. I've also had children in the summertime in the sun all day because the parent locked them out. They're outside in the sun all day, no water, no food, no sunscreen.
See, I see that differently than a kid not having a coat because, again, you've got your socioeconomic, sometimes parents can't afford proper attire. And so,
But there's a difference, okay? There really are ways of getting some things. There are churches in town that will give you a coat. ARC has got coats for $5. Tell the teacher at school your child needs a coat. It's when that parent will take help.
or doesn't know where to go to get it.
We have an incredible relationship with the elementary schools here in Brighton.
Mhm.
They will call our church office. We will provide them clothing. We will provide them food. We will provide those needs. The teachers usually call it into their office and the office reaches out to us. So here in Brighton, we can say we do have a network to care for those who can't afford a coat or
Right,
socks
so
or shoes.
there are those who cannot afford.
There are.
Yeah, and
The
so the
difference
schools are
being,
taking care of that.
If that child was sent home with coats and mittens, because we donate 200 pairs of mittens every year to the
Right.
elementary schools.
Mhm.
If that child is sent home with coats and mittens, and you know they don't have any, and that comes back Monday morning with the dad saying, don't you ever treat my child like a charity patient again. We don't need anything from you. That's different.
Mhm.
That's different. There are 3 basic types of neglect: physical neglect, educational neglect, and emotional neglect. Physical neglect: failure to provide food, clothing appropriate for the weather, supervision, a home that's hygienic and safe, and or medical care as needed. And these parents that have the religion where you can't take your child to the doctor, they're in trouble all the time. That would be hard. Educational neglect: failure to enroll a school-age child in school or provide necessary special education. You don't want your child to go to school because there's bullying. Okay, I get that. You got a computer? You got online classes. You can enroll. Brighton probably has 20 ways to get your education. They've tried everything. They meet every need there is. Your child wants hands-on? Okay, we got this school. Your child does well studying in class? We got this school. Oh, your child doesn't like school, they've been bullied, but you want to do it at home? Okay, we've got this. But you cannot say there will be no education. That is illegal in Colorado. It includes allowing excessive absences from school. I retired 8 years ago from teaching, And the very last week of my teaching was pretty much the end of it for me. I only had students a semester, high school level. I had a student that missed 42 classes. Starting at class 3, I always called the parents, and every time that child was absent, I called. I sent emails, I text, I notified the office, I notified the dean, I notified the principal, I notified their counselor. Nothing. The last week of school, she's a senior, and she's here and there in the building, but never in my class. She had to have my class to graduate. And somebody, I said somebody, texted the principal and said, Miss Prince is picking on my grandchild. There's nothing wrong with my grandchild. She's in school every day. I didn't even send certified letters. The principal's response was, I wish we had more parents and grandparents who advocated for their child. You like that response, Beth?
No.
Okay? I kept telling her something's not right. She's not in school. And when she is in school, I don't know if she's in class. I see her in the building. But when I look at her record, she's missing everything, everywhere. Something's going on in this family. And it really was up to the school to find out what. They didn't do it. Something was wrong there.
Was she missing every class or just yours?
She was missing mine pretty much permanently, but she was missing it everywhere.
All of them?
None of them as bad as mine. Yes, as an elective teacher, that's not unusual. Electives, they always think, you'll pass me no matter what. I don't. Emotional neglect. Failure to provide emotional support, love, and affection. This includes neglect of the child's emotional needs and failure to provide psychological care as needed. Anybody hear of the rhesus monkeys? There's a study done way back in the Dark Ages. They took 3 sets of monkeys and put them in cages. One, people just reached in, handed them a bottle, and kind of held it for them, but wouldn't let the monkey touch them. They never went in the cage. 2, they put a mommy monkey in there that was wire, but she was covered with carpet, and they attached the bottle to where the bottle would stay in there, and the monkey could wrap itself around the bottle and drink. 3, they gave the bottle through the monkey, but they took the carpet off the monkey. Just a wire. What do you think happened to those babies? Let's pick the one that had nothing. No cuddling, no love whatsoever. What do you think those monkeys became?
Psychotic.
Psychotic's a good way of describing it. It was horrible. I saw videos on it. It was the most horrible thing I ever saw in my life. But I recognized it too. The dummy with just the wire and no carpet. How do you think those monkeys did? A little better, but not by much. They had no socialization. They couldn't, monkeys pick things off each other and cuddle it. None of that. The monkeys who had the carpet one that they could actually cuddle around and hold on to did much better. It is in the DNA for touch, human touch. It's one of the worst things they have with prisoners. When you put them in isolation, they're there for a reason. But you got somebody in isolation by themselves for how many years? It is in the DNA to want some kind of human touch. And so if you have a child not getting that. In Russia, you see feral children. Children that have just been abandoned in the streets because the parents can't feed them. And so you have children just feral running in the streets, 8-year-olds that would do anything for food. They have no social lessons. They have no human touch that was loving, only abusive. You remember the story Tarzan? Did you ever read that story when you were a kid or see the movies? In the movies, we watch Tarzan grows up and speaks young. Come on, Jane, let's go do this, right? They don't. If you have not learned that by the age of 8, it's almost impossible to learn any social or verbal language skills. So emotional neglect is critical. They must have that emotional connection. Abandonment is also considered a form of child neglect. We have generations now of children who have been abandoned. What happens? In general, a child is considered to be abandoned when the parent's identity or whereabouts are unknown. The child has been left alone in circumstances where the child suffers serious harm, or the parent has failed to maintain contact with the child or provide reasonable support for a specified period of time. How do you learn what it is to be a man if you're not exposed to a good man? Generations have been abandoned. When I taught high schoolers, there were what I called the surfers, couch surfers. Mom would go off and sleep with a boyfriend at his apartment. Dad had not been around if ever. Who's with this child? 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18 years of age. And they've just been abandoned. Mom pays the rent in the apartment still. But their child are what I call couch surfers because they have to have human contact. And if mom's not there, then they go stay at grandma's. Well, grandma's saying, what's going on here? You're not moving in with me. So they go to auntie's. Well, auntie says, that's great. I'm glad you're going to visit, but you're not staying with me. Well, then they go to their best friends, and their best friends saying, I already got one kid. I don't need two. Right? And they start a pattern. Couch surfing. House to house to house to house. It's because they've been abandoned. Some signs of child neglect. Clothing unsuited to the weather. High school kids. How do you make a high school kid put on a pair of pants and boots and jacket? You can't. But you mean tell me you can't an 8-year-old? A 10-year-old? You're still the parent.
I walked around the corner and took it off.
I did too. I actually
So
had a
hot.
culvert that I would take my coat off because I hated my coat, and I would stuff it in the culvert and then get it when I went home at night. High school's different, but we're talking about young children, right?
I was 8 when I did it.
You still do it, Deb.
I still do it.
Extreme hunger. How hungry are they? You see a child, maybe they like cookies, so they're going to take 10 cookies and eat 5 now and put them in their pocket for later. There's a real difference in a child's presentation or attitude when they're hungry. They will hide food. Apparent lack of supervision. Nationwide, 1,500 children will die each year from child abuse and neglect. 30% of them will die due to child neglect alone. We're so worried about child abuse that we forget they're still children. An adult must be there. Of the children who are abused or neglected, over 78% of them will experience neglect. If you're beating up on the child, why do you care if they have a coat or not, or food or not? Abusers thrive on secrecy, isolation, and their ability to manipulate victims. Remember I talked about grooming? The reason I will molest you, and you better be okay with it, then I'll leave your sister alone. The reason I will beat you, and you take it, because then I won't beat your brother. Okay? They'll negotiate. They'll make that child hide it and negotiate. Don't tell anybody, because if you do, I'm going to start on them. I'm going to start on your mother. I'll make sure you never see your grandmother again. It has to be done in secrecy, though. And that's why classes like this, to let you know, if you suspect something, that's all it takes, just a suspicion. Protects innocent adult from being accused also. I can't think of anything worse than somebody working in this building and some kid somewhere gets upset over one thing you've said, and next thing you know, there's an accusation. How do we implement all of this? You're the beginning of it. Well, not really. We're the beginning. You're in the middle. This is the train that has to happen. Okay? SPRC has developed job descriptions. We didn't really have them before. We do now. Position application form. It was amazing how many times somebody got hired because somebody knew them. Personal reference forms of paid and volunteers. Today, I asked you to fill out your volunteer form. It's hard. I mean, you can't imagine how hard it was to go, Gwen, Lois, I really need you to do this, and here's why. And they were the first ones to sign up. Okay? It's hard. We all know each other, we think. We're all friends. It's hard. But because of Safe Sanctuaries, that's what's necessary to be sure our children are safe. Criminal background background checks on paid staff. We don't do them on volunteers. Reference checks on any person working volunteer or paid with any child at VUMC. We do reference checks. Okay. Now, what we had decided to kind of get this program going, okay, was, Lavita, you've been here for how long?
17 years?
Val, you've been here 45, 50?
Yeah.
But we're actually not going to check Val's references. Okay? What we did decide, though, in the future we probably will, because we'll have done the mass here and got it going. Okay? But let's say, I was talking to a new lady that's new in our church today. Nice lady. She was in Tuesday's class. I enjoyed her. That's great. But if she wants to volunteer, we need to check her. I don't know her from Adam. And we will check her. It takes 3 of us to approve not actually going in and checking your references and your criminal background. I have to agree, Sue Slaughter and Joel. Okay. Training for all volunteers and paid workers on policies and identifying child abuse. Joel was in the last training session. The church's screening procedures should be applied to all workers, paid, volunteer, clergy, and lay who interact with children and youth, says the General Conference. I didn't create any of this. This is out of the Methodist Church, okay? Every slide I've shown you either came from the state of Colorado or from the General Conference. Implementation. We have one-way glass in the nurseries and toddler rooms. Half doors in the nursery and toddler rooms. Those all came about when I ran the daycare here because I insisted on it. Glass doors in all of the rooms. One of the first things Joel did, and I think some people thought it was a little strange, was he wanted the door out of his office, and if you notice there's a window in his office and he never covers that window. Never. Okay? We need to see into rooms. I go by a room and it's got a curtain up over the door. I'm opening that room as fast as I can. There should be nothing happening in any room that needs privacy, unless a bride is changing in the nursery. That's the only privacy needed. Hall rowing by assigned adults. We have agreed that 2 adults every day of VBS will be rowing the halls. If you need help, something happens, there's another adult available to you. Okay? Now, when you're doing VBS, we'll have this disc ready, and there may be a person who shows up that morning and says, you know, I'd really like to be involved in this. We're not going to send them to a room. I'll take them to a room. We're going to show them this. I will actually, you don't have to do it, aren't you happy? But they will have a worksheet to fill out about what they saw, so they can't just say, I watched it but didn't. Okay? They will take their 2.5 hours, do their training. I'll ask a few questions, or Sue Slaughter will ask a few questions. We will check their references, and then if everything's okay, they can come back the next day. But they won't be in the room until all that's done. So here's the other thing. Let's say that Val's working with a group, and she's got an approved person with her that's new, but we've approved her. Val cannot leave her in the room alone with those kids, though. Okay? Until time goes by, I'm talking about months and years. If you have a new person in your room that you've never seen in this church, you cannot leave them in the room with those children. Wait until one of the adults come around, okay? Or possibly send that new person off to do what you need done. But you cannot leave the new people alone in the room with these children. We don't know them. 2-adult rule, 3-person rule. That is all on your second page. Go over those in your own time. 2-adult rule were approved. This conference gave us a little bit of leeway on the 2-way rule, not much, in that, let's say for the youth, there's supposed to be 2 adults there all the time, but somebody called in sick or it didn't happen, then you stay in the room with all the kids and you have the other kids as your witness. Okay, at least some other person is there, okay? But our paid staff, volunteers cannot be left alone in a room with a child. You can't isolate yourself. Doors left open if at all possible. Now that was kind of put in there for Joel. Joel's counseling somebody. That's private. I don't want to know what it's about. He's got the one-way glass. I still don't want to know what it's about. If he's counseling a woman, he leaves the door between him and Lisa, and he'll tell Lisa, I'm in counseling, the door is open. Okay? And she's expected to stay on the far corner, but if there's an emergency, she can come in and get him. She doesn't have to knock or wait, just knowing that another person can walk in. Okay? Another adult in the room, and doors still left open. Okay? Is that somebody there? Reports to protect children, church, and workers and volunteers. Okay, you have seen all this. Now let's say you get a child in, they got a black eye, maybe a missing tooth or cracked lip, and you see them with the parent, and something just in your stomach is not right. Okay? You can call that anonymous number and never tell us anything. We would ask you not to do that, though. But you can. All right? First, let's start with, this isn't for the abuse part, but one of the things I found when I started doing all this was we didn't have a good system of talking about accidents and incidents in the building even. And we were, I think it was a wonderful Wednesday or Monday, Thursday or something, but we were coming from the sanctuary into here, and somebody fell. An elderly lady fell and hit her head. I mean, I heard the crack across the room. You okay? Yeah. You call an ambulance? No? Okay. She sat down and nothing was ever done about it. I went back the next day and said, did anybody file anything on that? Because one of the things I had to do to get ready for this was read our insurance policy. And there's supposed to be reports on things like that. Now imagine a child. You get a child come running in here and runs into that post from VBS. Or there's lemonade on the floor and they slip and fall. Anything that happens, you've got to fill this out as a volunteer and as a worker. Okay? And you can read it kind of on your own time. It's just basic. All right? Oh, I'm sorry. I'm showing you the wrong one. Wrong one. Sorry. Which one is it? Accident report's what I'm talking about. Sorry. Accident report. Okay? Fill that out. Have witnesses sign it. Because if we're going to get involved in a lawsuit, we're going to need to know what happened and who saw it. Okay? So the accident report will be in the office. You don't have to bring this with you. It'll be in the office. If somebody gets hurt during VBS, Sunday school, church, anything, this needs to be filled out. Okay? And get it in the office as fast as possible. Okay? That's the accident report I was talking about. Deb, when you go on mission trip, I would take a stack of those. Okay? And if it's something that's fairly serious, you may want to even fax it off to Lisa.
We don't allow hospital runs or emergency.
That would be nice. That would be nice.
Be saying some prayers.
As SPR even said, we don't expect any.
No,
Okay.
I mean, that's our rule
Things
number
happen.
one.
Things happen. Take you some of these so you
Yeah.
have the right information down. Because your memory
American
kind of
Home,
changes
no
even
emergency,
overnight.
no wins.
Okay? Your witnesses walk away and you never see them again. Make sure there's witnesses. Okay? Now, report a suspected incident of child abuse. Find that one in your packet because that was the one.
Last page.
Report of suspected incident of child abuse. Number one, print it so we can read it. You may have pretty handwriting, but make sure we can read it. Okay? Now, I say we, but it's not me. All right? Do not interview the child, like we've talked about all through this. It's not your job to interview, because if you're not careful, you'll kind of, without meaning to, you will lead the child to say something that's going to be a world of hurt. Okay? Don't interview. You heard about neglect and food and sexual and afraid of adults, and you put all this stuff together with your life experience. And when your gut says, that's something I need to be concerned about, that's when you really stop to pay attention to it. Okay? We're going to go over this one together. Do not interview the child. Leave this for the experts. Name of the worker, paid or volunteer, observing or receiving disclosure of child abuse. Victim's name. Date, place of initial conversation with report from victim. It was VBS. I was in my classroom, and we were having snack, and little Susie Jonathan Furman told me she hadn't eaten in 2 days. And she looks very underweight to me, and I'm concerned. Okay? Again, she may just be skinny. So really think about it. The first thing I suggest you do with this is pray. Pray for God's leadership on this. Victim's statement, detailed summary. Little Susie Furman told me she had not eaten in 3 days. Okay. Name a person accused of abuse. Well, did she live with grandma? She lived with parents? Who was supposed to feed her? Relationship of accused to victim. Is it a family member? Is it a member of our paid staff? Is it our reverend? Is it me? Who did this to this child? What's the relationship? Are they a teacher? Are they a coach? Are they, what are they? Okay, parent, brother? The next thing we're going to ask you to do, and I want to stress this, you don't have to. There's no law saying you have to report this to anybody. You can go straight to that line or the police department and report it. We ask you to fill this out though and let Joel know, or whoever our minister is at the time. The reason for that is the last thing we need is to break the news and Joel get up and answer the door and here's a news reporter saying, Reverend, well, what do you think about what happened at your church? What? Okay. He cannot convince you and should not convince you yes or no report. That's not it. It's just so somebody in the building is prepared for what's going to happen next. The date and time you reported it. Summary, what'd you tell them? Your signature, the date. You're done. Now at that point, Joel has to do this part, the second part, you don't. Joel now has a job to do because guess what? That was not a confidential session. He's heard about a possible neglect or abuse from somebody, okay? He has his own reporting to do. I want to stress though, nobody has to know who it is. Nobody can stop you from reporting, okay? Not your job, not the minister, not SPR, no one. Trust your instinct. Social Services Protective Referral Form is something then that's in the office. And when Joe calls, he's got that page and another one to fill out saying, who did he talk to at Social Services? What time did he talk to them? What's their name? What did they say? What's the next step? The reason we do that is the last thing we want to do is make a call in, something make the news, and Social Services say, we didn't hear anything about that. Okay? Your volunteer application is a step in this. Social Services policy, no, Safe Sanctuaries policies of BUMC. Safe Sanctuary self-evaluation form. When I began this process, I had questions that had to be answered. Does your church, does your church, does your church, no, 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 no. We didn't do any of it. So the last time I sent a report to Methodist Church, it was all yeses. We've done everything they've asked us to do. Pray over it. Remember, a little knowledge is dangerous. Are you sure? And even then, you don't have to be sure, right? Just suspect strongly. Make notes. When you're making notes for yourself, so you don't forget, don't put your name on it. What if your notes get lost? Okay? Don't lose it. The form I already showed you, we talked about it. Hand deliver it to minister, to Joel. Now let's say this comes up during VBS and Deb's with them, or it comes up and maybe we were having a youth day at the park or something, okay, and Joel's not there. Or, I don't want to say Joel, because what if he's gone? Our minister is not there, okay? Then whoever is in charge of that event can take the form. We've talked to Deb about, as the youth leader being paid, she can take the form if she's running an event. If nothing else, get it to the office as soon as you can. Then the leader will take it to the minister if that's what's needed. If he was not available at the time and you had to give it to somebody, Lisa or the leader of the event. The minister must report, but by law, so can you. Okay? I do not ever want to take away your right to report. It protects too many children. Broughton United Methodist Church. The congregation's comprehensive prevention strategy, not in any particular order, the 2-adult rule was required by the district and by our insurance. You want to go to sleep at night, read our insurance policy. Sunday school and after church groups. As of now, we average 2 to 4 children, so the 3-person rule seems most appropriate. 1 adult, 2 children in the room at all times. Minimum. Children's church, that happens during the service. 2-adult rule. If circumstances warrant, 1 adult and a high school youth can be used, but that is supposed to be a rare event. Youth group. Leader plus 1 volunteer or more depending on the activity. Mission trips, sleepovers, field trips out of town will include 1 male and 1 female. Not the 2 volunteer adults cannot be married, cannot be in the same household. It's hard to report your spouse, isn't it?
No.
Okay. It's certainly easier. I can tell you when I did all this, my husband was always the second adult. It's changed. Parents can volunteer using a sign-up rotation schedule, phone tree to get a substitute if they can't attend on their scheduled day. We need parents to take some control over this themselves. 3-person rule for general youth group meetings, preferably an adult parent volunteer. 3-person rule seems most appropriate, 1 adult and 2 children in the room at all times. VBS. Oh, going back up. Let's say the parent doesn't show up and all the kids have gone home, you got 1 kid left. The parent doesn't show up, the parent doesn't show up, the parent doesn't show up. You call the parent and say, oh, I forgot, can you just bring her home? Our previous youth director used to bring Skylar home all the time. Our insurance has a fit, okay? The parent needs to come pick the child up. VBS. Adults in leadership roles, our insurance insisted on it. Youth groups as group monitors, standing outside bathroom doors available if necessary to help a child. Do not go in the bathroom. Lucy's the only one that has young children. She's done a criminal check. In case you don't know, this is Lucy from our nursery. She's had a criminal background check. She's had reference checks. She's A-OK. She is actually daycare qualified in the state of Colorado to do her job. To work with babies, toddlers, infants, okay? What you're getting in your classrooms, though, should be potty trained. You should not have to go to the bathroom with them. But they need to be monitored going to the bathroom. So have a teen stand outside the door or you stand outside the door. But unless there's an emergency, you should not need to go in with them.
They usually get locked in the bathroom stall.
Yeah, and I've had to climb under stalls. And in that case, you grab another adult and say, well, you stand here while I go do this.
And you grab a teenager to send them under.
God.
Yeah, send the teenagers.
Send the teenager under.
That's why we have the
As long
youth.
as you're the adult standing, but make sure there's a 2-person rule. It seems silly. It does, I know, and it's a pain, I know. But all that child has to say was, you know, I locked myself in the bathroom, the teacher came in, and she kind of held my hiney while I went. Huh? The teacher wiped me when I went. Huh? Okay. You don't need anything. 2 designated adults rotating or roaming through the church as extra eyes and help is needed. I don't want to get social services involved, they mess up families. We've all heard the horror stories. But I can promise you that's not what they set out to do. They really want to make the child's life better. And yeah, sometimes that goes kind of astray. But what we don't hear are the families they put back together that make better families. While out-of-home placements are necessary in some cases to protect the children, most children and teens who receive help through child welfare services, I've been calling them social services all day because that's what I know them as, but it's actually child welfare services. 68% of children and youth receive services in their own homes. That's huge. 32% of children and youth were placed in out-of-home placements, kinship care, foster care, group home, or residential treatment facility. I don't remember what I meant by that star. The star usually means I had a personal note I wanted to make, and I don't remember what it was. There's that number again. If you didn't write it down, I would. Keep in mind, you call the police, which is fine. You can. But you may have to testify in court. Call the anonymous hotline, you don't. The main purpose of the hotline is to quickly route callers to the appropriate county. It's a good system. They've been trained well. And they know exactly who to call. It doesn't matter if you're in Adams County, Lamar County, Grand County. It doesn't matter. They have the resources to deal with this. You'll be asked to speak the name of the county where the child resides, and then we'll be connected to that county. Okay? Callers who are not sure of the county, speak a language other than English or Spanish, or are deaf or hard of hearing will be directed to a Hotline County Connection Center representative who will assist them with that. 24/7, 365 days a year. They're trained, certified annually. We've kind of already said that. It's the best system I've ever seen. It works a heck of a lot better than we used to just call the police department or child welfare services. Any questions? This is hard because we're all the family of God in this church. It's hard. But if you save one child's life, how many times have we heard in the news that some parent locked a child in a closet and fed them nothing but watermelon for a year? And when that child died, the neighbors went, well, I knew there was something in that family. Or the teacher said, yeah, I knew he was losing weight, and he quit coming to school. Okay. How many times have we been at family gatherings and maybe a girl there is a little too aggressive? And we thought, where'd she learn that? Okay. We see it, and we see it a lot. And it's not, I used to have fits with Danger Stranger. Remember Danger Stranger, where they went to schools and talked to everybody about, watch that stranger? It's not the stranger you gotta watch for. It's hardly ever the stranger. It's someone you know. And our job, when that child is baptized in this church and the Reverend puts them in front of us and we say, we will protect and nurture that child. We took an oath before God. This is part of it.